I have invested in or followed Uber stock for over 7 years now. And in this episode, I'm going to explain why I sold Uber stock at 100% profit a little over 2 years ago. I'm Tom, the Investing Tiger. Welcome to this channel. Welcome back if you're returning. And hey, this is a new channel. I only have 40 or so subscribers. This is probably the first time you're stumbling across it. So I sold Uber at about $76 a share 2 years ago. And I'm going to give you a little bit more context on it. I feel like my experience with Uber, I have always stood alone from the crowd on the stock. So I was buying it, post pandemic, there was a period where Uber just continued to trade high 20s, low 30s, mid 30s, low 40s. And credit there, he did a great job, the CEO, of making Uber profitable as it continued to scale. And that's what really drew me into the stock post IPO. It felt like an eponymous type durable name. I was really attracted. They were a disruptor, as we all know, when it comes to mobility, when it comes to debility. And they've been trying to crack the nut now for freight for years and still doesn't look it. So why did I sell the stock? Well, let me tell you this story real quick, a little bit myself as an investor. Most of my investments are in index funds. When I go into an individual stock, I tend to buy it and hold it. Every year I do what's called a thesis check, usually in July, and I run every stock I own. Currently, I have 15 individual stocks, a little bit high for me right now. But a couple of years ago, when I put Uber through this, what I call thesis check, it just wasn't holding up. And what I mean by that, how did it measure up to what I had originally bought it for? And could I confidently hold it long term in the future? And I started seeing cracks that are not really showing up yet. But 2 years later, I think we're hearing more and more of those things. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to get into a little bit now. I've stood alone because when I was buying the stock, it looked crazy. They're not going to be profitable. They're not going to scale. They have all this regulatory risk that they have to clear. There were so many reasons not to buy it in the 30s. So when it got to the 70s, it felt like that's when people started getting interested. Over the last year to 6 months, we've seen the so-called air quotes smart money come in, and they are smart money. Pershing Square, Bill Ackman, people of that ilk. I mean, they're multi-billionaires in what they do. But I had 100% gain. In the rare case, let me just take a profit. And generally, when I buy a stock and have to sell it, in a way, I consider it as a failure, even if I made a double, because then I have to take on another risk. I've got to take that money and do the search all over again. Could that money be deployed elsewhere? So I was in that summer of 2024 of, you know what, I'm not getting paid a dividend. I have 100% gain. What does the future look like? So I'm going to share a couple of things that I did, my thoughts, and what I think is going to happen next. So one of the things that really stood out was this. When we look at the 10Q, hey, it's out there. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what concerned me a little bit. So one, I was right. They were clobbering it when it comes down to revenue that they were generating from, here are their three business segments: mobility, delivery, all heading in the right direction. Freight's going nowhere. It's almost the same position it was 6 or 7 years ago when I first started following Uber. So write that one off. Delivery is making great progress and continues to. I know they've got the Delivery Hero acquisition that's closing, and that's going to be pretty accretive going forward. But this is the thing, mobility. When we start getting down to the contribution, we look at it on a 6-month basis. This is actually narrowed a bit, but it's still 2/3 of their operating income. So then you start doing, what's the risk there? Folks, you can do this. I did a search of the 95-page 10Q. I'm not making this stuff up. This is Uber talking about this as a risk. Search autonomous in the 95-page document, and it will come up not once, not twice, not 3 times as a risk factor, 36 mentions in their own 10Q. So I know that's out there. It might not be a clear and present danger, but it's out there lurking. And that's when the thesis really started to, that's what the, that's when the thesis really started to break down for me. See, their business model, I loved Uber from a disruption standpoint. You can't argue what they did from a disruption standpoint to what got them there, where we are now. And I think there's a positive runway for Uber, potentially for a bit. No immediate concern, but when I buy something, I want to hold it long term. And when I think problems are coming up, the problems, when they show up, the last place it shows up is what I just showed, the 10Q. It all looks good until it doesn't. And that's where I get a bit concerned. So I know there's a lot of bullish content out there. Oh, and this is the real ironic part. When I look for content on Uber, everything bullish has been talked about right now. This month, last month, even the last year. Pound the table, Uber's a buy. 6 or 7 years ago, I'll tell you what, go back. I challenge you, go back, you can look at Uber stock videos and go back maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It was all bearish then. I always get concerned when the trade gets crowded or the sentiment gets crowded on one side or the other. That's just a red flag for me. So again, 2 years ago, I sold Uber, and I think what's coming, and we're still very early, hasn't happened yet, is this transition to AV. And my concern is what I just showed, that 2/3 of their operating income is dependent upon delivery. I just don't know how the friction is really going to hold up. Like, AV operators are going to be dependent as Uber from an aggregation standpoint. There's some great videos out there that say that's going to happen. They're going to say that's the what, but show me the how or the why. That's the part that's speculative, in my opinion. We look at the 2 or 3 biggest AV operators right now, the ones that are probably going to emerge and dominate. That's Waymo, Tesla, and Zoox. Waymo's already pulling back. Like, what do they know? They don't use them in the Bay Area. What we do know is where they compete head to head with Uber on their own. We did see Uber and Lyft. Oh, poor Lyft. Does anyone really even talk about Lyft in this conversation? What's going to happen there? That's a story in itself. But we see some decrease. We see some decrease in gross bookings side by side with Waymo operating with Uber. I don't know. That's just I wouldn't call it a red flag, but it just gives you a data point that's out there. Waymo's pulling back in one market, Phoenix, and then winding down Austin by 2028. Now, Tesla's an interesting story. It's just as speculative. It's on the other side. Are they going to dominate? If they dominate, in my opinion, they're not going to need Uber. They're vertically integrated. They've got the cars, they've got the technology, and potentially they'll even have the drivers. When I say drivers, the use of the drivers' cars. If I own a Tesla or bought a Cybercab or even a Y, I can just turn my car on and it goes onto the network. Why would Tesla? They're not even interested. Why would they partner with Uber to be an aggregator standpoint? In that case, Tesla supplies both sides of the equation. The supply of the product, the available supply, and the demand. They can match the demand. So it feels, I don't know how Uber differentiates. Now, does it mean Uber completely goes away anytime soon, becomes insolvent? No, that's the case. I think the market's trying to tell us something here. So you have to start asking yourself, why does Uber trade at 17 times forward earnings? A growth stock with these numbers should be trading 30 something times earnings. And a classic value investor will tell you this is great value, and I would agree. And I think in a short-term window it is. But I don't know if this is where you start breaking down Ben Graham analysis when there's potential disruption on the horizon. So I think we see that disruption there. And on the other side of the fence, we've got little old Tesla plugging along at 100 and something times forward earnings. Doesn't make sense from a valuation standpoint now when we look at those numbers. I grant you that. But please, I'll buy Uber back if you can. If I have not seen a compelling enough argument to jump in essentially at the same price or a little bit lower than I sold it 2 years ago. Like if I'm going to miss the market on this, I'll jump right back in there. But I have not seen, and I've done personal searching, I have seen a lot of content out there, and bulls tell me it just hasn't convinced me for my thesis 2 years ago. I see what looks like a declining or a shifting market on a service that Uber has dominated. And my question remains, will they be able to go from their typical asset light aggregator model and make that transition? And I don't know if partnering with a dozen, close to 2 dozen different AV operators that one either don't have a car built or the technology built yet, and spending capex, some of their $10 billion of free cash flow in those partnerships is really going to solve it, because I don't think AV is going to be as fragmented as that. It wasn't with the mobility rollout. When we look at delivery services, all fragmented in every market, 2, 3, at most 4 providers. I don't see AV following 20 different providers. So it's one of those things that you just can't see it now. It seems like yesterday, a Friday night, a Friday night going to Blockbuster Video, and it was crowded. Get there as soon as you could because the new release came out and you better be in the store. Seems like just yesterday. That's not a thing anymore, isn't it? It changed overnight. So the 200 million users, active users of Uber, I think that stuff can change. Now, granted, it's not going to change as quick as video rental. The best thing I think Uber has going for it right now is sitting on the clock in time. And they have that big advantage. I've talked a little bit about this. That's legislation and regulation. Nothing quick is going to happen there. And I think there's a little bit of a stigma effect with Tesla not letting them, and we just saw it a couple of days ago. Tesla applied for licenses of 5,000 robotaxis in the state of Nevada, and they came back and they granted them, you can count it on 2 hands, 10. Tesla, you can operate 10 robotaxis in Nevada. It'll be Las Vegas. Oh, and those 10 do have restrictions. They have to be in the strip, no airport runs, and no speeds over 45 miles an hour. Those are pretty big restrictions. So I think that continues to push out and elongate a little bit of the exposure that Uber does have, but it's coming, and I think it will come. Waymo's trying to do the same thing, but like Waymo's been at it a little bit longer. Why can't they scale? Regulation, and heck, they've got a very expensive product with all those fancy lidars on them, and in some cases, it just flat out doesn't work. It gives up when it needs to be there. So please do a couple of things. I'm an open-minded investor. I'll tell you, when I talk about this topic, I am like a heretic. And it's the irony of it is, how could you not see the value in Uber? And 7 years ago, it was like, how do you see the value in Uber? Well, I was right once to this part. Doesn't mean I'm always going to be right. Am I going to be right again? I don't know. I would love comments. I would love email. Message me on X. I'm active on there. But when I open this topic up on X, and I tell you, I have a small channel here, a much larger following, an active account on X. This topic, it really draws out. Ooh, I tell you what, I could talk politics and get less controversy than ever saying that I don't see the value in Uber. Please talk me into it. I'll buy it back here if it makes sense. And I just don't see it to this point. Well, thank you for listening. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and I'll keep bringing content like this.